This is Transqat, a safe space to stand. Transgender issues, queer people, respectful conversations. I'm host Clare McCarthy. Welcome to Transqat. Today's episode offers a large panel discussion of a short film. Sorority will be screened during this year's Outfilm CT Festival. Specifically, you can see it on Wednesday, June 25th at 7:30 p.m. I'll be leading a Q&A session with some of the folks you'll be meeting in just a minute. Now, I am not impartial about this film. Back in the fall of 2024, Ash and Chrissy reached out to me and asked if I would serve as a consultant. I agreed, provided they come on the show and discuss it. My contribution is literally a 2-second segment, but seeing it made me feel good about myself for almost half an hour. This crew of women storytellers, as you're going to hear, is brilliant and talented and funny, and a lot of them are queer, and that they welcomed me into their sisterhood means more than I can put into words.
In the spirit of film.
Perfect.
I love this. It's a very BTS moment. I'll start. I'm Ashley Gianni. I was one of the executive producers, the co-writer, the director, and I play Tori in Sorority.
I'm Kristen Scatton. I was also an executive producer, also a co-writer. I was the script supervisor, and I have played Meredith, a very small non-speaking role.
I'll go next. My name is Shelley Rowe. I am also an executive producer, and I play Natalie.
My name is Epiphany Colleen, and I play Fiona.
Yay, I'll go. I'm Danielle Beckman, and I play Meredith. So I don't know who you play, Chris.
Oh, wait. Oh, no. Oh, my God. Marjorie. Oh, my God. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, right. When you're a writer, all those characters live in your head, you know?
I knew it was an M. I got the first letter correct, but yes, you are correct.
And I was going to say, note the theme of all the different hats that everyone wears, you know, on this set. And that's what we do as indie filmmakers. So I was like, she could have done Marjorie and Meredith. But anyway,
recast. No.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm Danielle Beckman. I play Meredith in the film, and I'm so grateful that I was asked on this production by Ashley and Chrissy and the team. And I also am an associate producer on the project as well. And really excited to see you again, Claire, and be here.
I'm Bree Jones, and I was the editor and colorist for Sorority. And I had a lot of fun. And I was on set, like Ashley mentioned.
The colors in that bathroom are definitely something I want to come back to you about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely a lot of credit to the DP as well and our gaffer for they kind of made the lighting easy for me to accentuate and highlight.
I guess elevator pitch. What is Sorority about? Ashley, how many words should I give you?
You should always limit my word count. Sorority is about a trans woman of color who gets welcomed into the sorority and sanctity of sisterhood in the most welcoming and precious of places, the women's restroom. And it is our love story as a team, as co-writers, as a director. It is our love story to our trans sisters and our way of reaching our hands out and letting our trans sisters know that they are welcomed, wanted, and belong, not only in women's restrooms, but in all spaces.
There's a lot of joy in this short film. And for a subject that for many of us is very stressful, very anxiety inducing, depending on where you are, I loved that. Thank you for that. Several of you were in on the creation of that. I was adjacent to it, but not actually involved. So the story of how this came to be.
Yes, well, you were very adjacent to it because it literally happened at the Out CT Film Festival where we met you last June. We were there with our film, The Fuscos. which Ashley and Danielle had co-written and starred
Shelley was
in.
there,
And
right?
Shelley
And
was there with her film Paradise Road.
Mm.
And I had for a long time wanted to write a short film set in a women's restroom because it's just, it seemed like such a prime place to set something, you know, particularly a short film, a self-contained location. And it's always just been this whole world where you can meet your best friends, you cry, you laugh, you get people giving you makeup tips and compliments. And I was like, man, this would be so much fun to just write a short set in a women's bathroom, but I never quite got the angle on it, the hook. And being at the OutCT Film Festival, which is so wonderful and also just had its own joyful, welcoming energy, something just sort of clicked into place for me. And I was like, what if it's a trans woman? Like, what if it's a trans woman being welcomed into the space? And so I went to Ashley and I was like, oh my God, I just had this idea for this short film, I think. And we just started talking about it while we were there at the festival. And, you know, a couple weeks later, Ashley writes me and she's like, hey, remember that idea that we were talking about? I wrote a draft of it. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And so we just kind of passed that back and forth. And, you know, we came up with the, you know, concept, and we were just like, yes, like this is it. This is fun. This is something that we can produce. And we set the goal for ourselves of let's make this by the end of the year. And, you know, we brought on Shelley as a producer, and we reached out to you, Claire, as a consultant, and we just found this incredible team. We brought in Epiphany as our incredible lead, and it just all sort of magically came together, which I think also speaks to the fact that, you know, there's something special about this story from the start, and there continues to be.
I wrote the log line at like 3:00 in the morning. We were at the men's shorts for OutCT, literally waiting in line for the all gendered bathroom, having talked about, right, like Chrissy said, like we already started talking about like what we need to come back. How are we coming back? You know, and literally that night, like could not sleep and rolled over, woke up around 3 a.m. and just sent myself exactly the log line that I just spoke about.
Shelley, what drew you in?
I think it was several things. Again, the Fusco's team and the Paradise Road team kind of met at OutCT, and then we kept on running into each other in different festivals, and we ended up saying, you know what, let's just go grab drinks and just sit somewhere and just talk, because it's just wonderful people that we want to work together. So we did, and we were about to pay, and then Ashley and I looked at each other and we're like, during the conversation, it seems like we think about things very similarly. So what are we working on together? And she's like, I have this short. I'm going to send it to you. Let me know. I read it, like immediately connected with everything that I like to work on. The idea of working with a lot of women, with women in positions of leadership within the team. That was a big yes for me. And I think I've made a point throughout my career to really look for stories that in one way or another exemplify queer joy and queer love, because I encounter a lot of queer stories, sure, while growing up, not a lot, honestly, but it was always kind of the punchline, or it was never just celebrating love and joy in regular everyday life, which is my experience and the experience of everyone around me that is queer. So the script, it's great writing. I really very much admire Ashley's and Chrissy's writing. And so I love the story. It was very contained from a production perspective. It was contained. It felt that we could do it. It had a lot of different voices, and it said a lot about where we are right now without being preachy. So yeah, immediately, I think it was maybe that night, the next day, I just texted Ashley and was like, I'm in. What are we doing? And then we met a few days after, and that was it.
And that was in like September, and then we shot in December.
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
It was a pretty quick process.
Shelley, absolutely no shade on the Paradise Road. I adored that short. I think I've seen it 3 times now, and it made me cry every time. It did this amazing thing, though, where while there is a kill your queers trope, it did not at any point occur to me that that's what was going on. There was so much love and humanity in those characters that it wasn't until actually just now when you said, we when we see representations of queer people in media, they're very often in these specific tropes.
Mhm.
And Paradise Road was nothing like that. But the leap from that heartfelt to this just sort of joyous atmosphere.
It was so fun, really, because yes, Paradise Road. Yeah, I every time I watch it, I still feel very sad for like the ending of it. I think one of the main points when we were building that film in pre-production with Lisa and working on all this was to make sure that we were telling the love story, and whatever was happening with it and like in their lives, it's one thing, but the love story was the important piece. And I think that was something like that happened, and we were going kind of through the festivals, and at the end of each of the screenings, people come up and they share very heavy experiences in their lives, almost always one of the most hard experiences in their lives. And so one of the things that I would say is that the leap from working with that, with then going into a sorority, and honestly, just the joy of like being in pre-production, thinking about like confetti and and the colors and just everything was just.
There was no shortage of glitter on this shoot.
No,
No. If there is Ashley Gianni attached, there will always be glitter.
Okay,
Yes.
good. That's important.
We can tell you stories about the glitter if we have time.
I'm looking forward to the reactions from screenings for this film, because I am sure it's going to be very different than what
we should bring glitter.
Yes.
You know how last year we brought spaghetti and meatballs to celebrate the Fuscos? We should bring glitter this year.
Oh, they're going to love us.
They're going to hate me.
Making a note of that. Bring glitter.
Bring glitter. Epiphany, at what point in the process did you get involved?
I'm not sure at what point I came in. A good friend of mine, Jeff, connected Ashley and I. We met for coffee and just kind of talked and got to know each other. I think I had the script before I met you.
Yes, you had auditioned already.
Yes, I had already auditioned. What attracted me to the role and made me want to be a part of the project is that it wasn't trauma porn. To piggyback off of what Shelley said, when it comes to these stories, they tend to be trauma porn. That's the only way I can describe it, And as a trans woman who has lived a different experience than maybe a lot of my trans sisters, when I identified, my parents allowed me to live in my truth. So a lot of things that other trans women have went through has not been my experience. And I find that I did an interview when I was on my little music kick, and my manager got me an interview with Billboard magazine, and they were asking me, about adversity and things like that. And I made the comment of the most adversity that I have felt, or the most negative energy I have felt, has always been from my own community. I find being a trans woman, and I hate to use this word, but it's the reality of the situation, a trans woman who is passable. I've always been accepted more by cis women and cis men and the hetero community more than my own community. So when I read this, it just reminded me of experiences in my life when I have met women and they have come to me with open arms, or, just respecting me as the individual that I am, instead of making me a victim or doing the, oh my God, you're so brave, or feeling that I support you and everything that sometimes it can come across as patronizing. And for a lot of trans people who are secure within themselves and really don't have, not to discredit anyone who is going through anything when it comes to their identity, but all of us aren't the same. And I find that they tend to put us in a box with the worst part of the experience leading. So for someone who is comfortable within themselves, I'd rather just be seen as just another girl on the block versus a victim needing to be saved or needing help. And when I read the script, it kind of spoke to that and those experiences. And I really respected how they handled the character of Fiona with care and a level of respect, and gave her integrity and dignity. And that's what spoke to me most.
And I'm so glad that you bring up the issue of passing, because this is something that I talked with the filmmakers about when we were in the development process, is that it's a very different story to have a beautiful passing woman in that lead role as opposed to someone who doesn't have that passing privilege. It becomes a very different story. The writers, can we just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say to thank you, Claire. When we had that meeting, because look, Ashley and I are cis women. This is not we're not coming at this from a lived experience perspective. And I know it was important to both of us to make sure we are, we're creating an accurate representation, not doing harm in our story. And we, appreciated you, Claire, taking the time to talk to us and talk about, some of these things that we, maybe weren't as conscious of, and, giving us the opportunity to do some rewrites and add some things into the script and just handle it as carefully and respectfully as possible, because we wanted to tell a joyful story, but we also, I think for me, it's about, a lot of times in my writing, it's about showing the world as it could be, not necessarily as it is, but it is also important to acknowledge, like, there's a lot that goes into telling this story and telling stories about the trans community, that we wanted to make sure we were being as respectful and authentic as possible.
And I think you found that balance.
I think a lot of that also then in turns goes into how intentional we were in terms of casting Fiona, and then what Epiphany brought to the table, right? So not only did Epiphany come to me through a very trusted family friend and colleague as our mutual friend Jeff, but then when we met, I was very clear, we were very clear with one another that, like, I told her, this is as much your story as it is ours. And I can't tell Fiona's story the way you could tell Fiona's story. And it was so clear from the beginning, from her audition tape, that, Epiphany understood Fiona on a level that maybe Chrissy and I were able to kind of like brush the surface, but Epiphany was the one who brought the life. Right. And understood all of the nuances. And so I really then relied on Epiphany a lot in collaboration to tell Fiona's story and how we surround Fiona and how that affects her.
One of the things that I really didn't catch on to until maybe the second viewing is that there's a progression, Epiphany, from you trying to interact with people in the bathroom without speaking. When you hand the toilet paper in, you don't say anything. And then when the two women are there talking about karaoke, there's a question about, oh, well, would you abandon your friend? And you just kind of giggle and shrug. And for me, I felt that because I don't have an especially feminine voice. And so that situation, that it takes you time and, frankly, Tori, before you speak. How much of that did you bring to the role?
You know what? You saying that is the first time I've ever really thought about that. I think with in my mind, Fiona just wanted to be left alone to do what she had to do. And then you got these crazy ladies coming in here, so I think it was more or less a thing of her having her walls up and her not wanting to interact because she was getting ready for a date. She was nervous about that. And, she just wanted to be in her space to gather herself. If you notice at the beginning, she's trying to talk herself up, like, I can do this, I can go on this date, I can get through this. And then all of a sudden, here comes all this other stuff that's taking her from being centered with herself and what she has to do, and pulling her into the space around her. So I think the beginning of it was just, for me, in my mind, just the hesitance of, okay, I really don't want to be bothered with y'all, but clearly y'all not going to leave me alone. So let me just, give into this. So I think it was more versus worried about the femininity of her voice. It was more along a thing of her having her walls up and kind of protecting her energy and her space.
This episode of Transqat is sponsored by the 38th Connecticut LGBTQ Film Festival. 9 glorious days of LGBTQ plus themed cinema begins Friday, June 20th. Feature films, documentaries, short films, we have it all. Most in-person screenings will be happening at Cine Studio on the Trinity College campus in Hartford. The closing night film and festivities will be at the Connecticut Science Center. The virtual program has exclusive content, plus the fan favorite shorts programs. Those thematically curated programs feature gay, lesbian, trans and non-binary, BIPOC, international, short documentaries, and a cluster of the committee's selections. Q&A sessions with filmmakers will accompany some of the screenings, both in person and virtual. For information, passes, and tickets, go to outfilmct.org. Make sure your Pride Month includes time with us, out at the movies.
As you know, when we go into these spaces, we don't know what to expect. And we don't know if giving someone a gesture of kindness can either backfire into them trying to figure out what's going on with us, or them knowing what's going on with us, and then we're bombarded with questions, or, things like that. So I think it was more or less a thing of Fiona just kind of being polite, but at the same time protecting herself.
Even at the point of when the photo shoot is about to start, you want to leave.
Yes.
For me, I was like, yeah, I am not comfortable with pictures of myself. I would probably have done the same thing. No, you guys go ahead. I'm out of here. I guess it's my insecurity that's coming out here.
I mean, and everyone who sees it is going to translate it in their way. And that's the part about art is, everyone takes it in from their own perspective. For me, it was more or less a thing of, I don't know you bitches. I'm not about to take a bunch of pictures with y'all. I have a date. I got to get on with my life, and it's more like, for me, I'm a very private person. I host shows, I produce shows. I'm very much an extrovert, but at heart, at my core, I'm an introvert. I don't want to be out and about socializing and things. And when I am, I'm there for a purpose. I'm the person who will go to the club and sit the whole time and people watch, and I think with her, it was just more or less a thing of, finding comfortability in connecting with strangers. As trans women, we have our villages, we have our support system, but at the same time, and I think this just transferred through all trans people, when we're in unfamiliar circumstances, we have to protect ourselves, and based on just who we are, our first reaction is to always to get back to where we're safe, or to remain in control of the situation that we're in. And I think with her wanting to, even though she had loosened up and everything, she doesn't want to give too much because we're always protecting ourselves. So it's a thing of, oh, now y'all want to do pictures. I don't know none of y'all. I don't need to be a topic in your conversation once we leave this point. Let me get back to my life. I think the true breakthrough was probably, and we'll get to that, was really at the end when her and Tori had that moment. As trans people, we have to worry about, are they going to clock my tea? You know what I'm saying? Are they going to know, is this a joke? Are you making a mockery of this? Those are the things that we think about. So I think those things run, to your point, those things run into play when she tried to dismiss herself to avoid putting herself in a situation of the unknown.
Ashley, in the script, there are a couple of moments where people ask for permission. They ask for consent before touching one another. I know it happens with the eyeliner. I think it happens. I think Epiphany says something to the effect of, I'm going in now to fix your bra. There were 2 or 3 moments like that.
One of them was the may I, when cleaning off the lip gloss off of her.
Right.
Yeah, that world, I definitely, I would love to hear your answer on that, Ashley, because I thought about that too. Like the culture of this bathroom that we walk into is consent based.
Yeah.
And I thought that that was really interesting.
I love that. Thank you for bringing that detail to the table. It's one that we don't get to speak about a lot. And I think it's a reflection of the women behind it. I think that Chrissy and I, as co-writers, myself as a director, then we expand to our producing team. I think we are just very consent-based humans. And so no matter what, that is kind of going to be our influence on the storytelling, but it was also the process, right? The entire process, the producing process, the casting process was really based around not just consent, but creating an environment where people felt like they could be vulnerable and voice their wants and needs. And so I think it is a reflection a lot of the women behind the project, but I also think it's then a reflection of female environments in general, or feminine environments. I shouldn't say female, but feminine energy, feminine environments. That's something we do naturally, is as femme humans, we are always in this kind of maternal energy of taking care of one another. And when you take care of someone, consciously or subconsciously, you're going to be asking for permission to invade their space. And I'm not saying all feminine energy does that, right? Like, we definitely have encountered women that invade our space and our boundaries. Usually they're intoxicated, right? Like, forgive them. And no, I think it speaks to the power of femininity in terms of how we give each other permission.
You end this with this lovely coda of everybody who's contributed, talking about that experience. So tell us, and Bree, maybe this is where we can bring you back in. What was the set like for you in this kind of a femme environment?
Oh my God, it was amazing. I have never been on a set with that many, queer people, women. Like, it was really an experience of like comfort. Like, I felt very comfortable. Just like the creative energy bouncing off of everyone was really like, you could feel it in your bones. And yeah, it was amazing just being, somebody who works in the post-production process, being able to like kind of visualize the story as it was being filmed and like seeing the cuts in my head. And it was really nice to be able to like kind of talk through some stuff with Ashley while I was on set and brainstorm together, because it kind of gave me like a blueprint for when I went to my computer and started like looking at the footage. But yeah, I mean, everything that everyone has said so far is things that I've picked up from the script and the story as I like watched Epiphany's performance. Those subtleties are really brought out once you actually like make the cuts and put the footage together.
I just want to say that to every filmmaker who is listening to this, you put the money aside to have your editor on set. It was the most invaluable part, one of the most invaluable parts of the experience, to have Bree there for both days of filming. Because then once we got into post-production, we were already in dialogue, in collaboration. We had already spoken about so much, and it was absolutely invaluable. I will go through every production for the rest of my life with Bree, and then also with my editor on set.
To all assembled, what was that experience like for you in terms of this really special atmosphere?
For me, it was incredible. I mean, this was the second professional film set I've been on. I've had the pleasure of working with Ashley and Danielle before, and as I go forward, there's no reason to have a set that is angry, toxic. Like, it's just proof. It's just proof that you can have a joyful set. And like, yes, things are going to go wrong. We had a bathroom situation the one day that had to be addressed. Filming in an office building in LA, and there was like, not the bathroom that we were filming in, but there was like a pipe situation, a backed up pipe situation, and we were just like walking around and being like, why does it smell like a soar in here now. Thankfully, Manzala Rose, who you also know, who she was Shelley's co-star in Paradise Road. She was our DIT, and she was on set, and we were like, "Can you run to Target and get some like air fresheners? And like we need to adjust the situation." So. And we did, and it was fine. All that to say is like, yes, things are going to go wrong on set. So as long as you have people on that set who are good energy, helpful, on top of things, like positive, willing to jump in and run to Target and buy up all their air fresheners, that should just be the bare minimum, right? Of like professionalism and cooperation, collaboration. I just can't imagine working on a set where everybody's running around and yelling at people and just being, a dick, basically. I'm just like, why? How is that going to help anybody? How is that going to make any of this get better performances out of your actors? How's that going to make anybody want to work harder? So yeah, so for me, it's just like the standard of what every set should be.
What was it? Was it 98% of female identifying
folks?
Only
2 male identifying humans on set.
But then also there's the fact that this set was curated in a way where everybody knew each other. However, that wasn't always the case. Not everybody always did know each other. But by the time I got there as an actor, it felt like that. And so the effort was there to create those relationships. And so that even if you're showing up on the day and maybe you're meeting one of the crew members for the first time, you've at least had a Zoom with them, or you've had a point of connection to create this community. And so I personally didn't know who knew who for how long, because it felt unified. And I think that effort on any set with any gender of, whether you're doing a $90 million budget or, $5,000 film, I think is so important to really and that comes from the top down. And so you all as producers and Ash as the director really set that, because there were people I showed up and I didn't know, but I felt like it was like there was a really nice glitter glue.
It just became, the story became so much bigger than the story we were telling on screen. And I think that was the beautiful part. It is for me as a filmmaker, and it's why, right, Shelley and I connect and Chrissy and I connect. It's why we collaborate so well, is because I think we are all aligned, and really everyone that we brought on the project, we're all aligned in the sense of being focused on telling not just queer joy stories and female driven stories, but then also really making a point of creating environments where we thrive. And if anything, I would say a lot of us hold kind of I don't want to say spite, but a bit of a fuck you to the industry of we have been lied to, right? We've been lied to as queer humans. We've been lied to as women in this industry that we aren't profitable, that we, our stories don't sell, our teams don't sell. It's impossible to do something with all women. I mean, it's a story that unfortunately, I think we all come to the table to, and one that I have been fed my entire professional career. Women can't do this. Queer people can't do that. These stories don't make money. You can't write. And for us, it was bigger than just the story on camera. It was the story we were telling as a collective of, look at the success that we can have when we put our energy and effort into empowering one another.
For me, the film and the experience ran parallel. I didn't know anybody outside of Ashley. So literally the movie we were making, I was actually living in making the movie because I knew no one, so I was very guarded because I was around a bunch of strangers. And I think what I respected and what made me comfortable was everyone stepped outside of themselves for the greater call. There was no ego involved or anything like that, because I'm not even going to hold you. I spent 99.9% in that bathroom.
Yep.
My mood was not the best. I was hot. I had on brand new shoes. My feet were hurting, and in my mind, you can think of everything that's going on with you internally, and it can affect you outwardly. But I just felt like I was given, and I can't phrase this any other way because I'm not like a happy, happy joy type of person. I'm very kind of serious. And I felt like I was given the most annoying hug that I just could not help but to drink the Kool-Aid. You know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't focus, like, oh, my feet hurt, I'm hot, I'm so tired. Everybody over here is just skipping and running around, and everybody's so goddamn happy. But it's like you just get sucked into it because you see it's bigger than you. And I had to tell myself, Epiphany, you're here to do a job. Yes, your feet hurt. Yes, you're hot. But I'm sure everybody else has issues going on. There's probably issues going on in editing, issues going on in lighting. The other girls may be dealing with their own issues, and everybody is just here for the greater good. So I use that as my motivation to not only get through the process, but to open myself up and connect with what was basically strangers to me.
You talked about the meta of it all, and I totally agree with Epiphany. The camaraderie in a women's bathroom happens, and that exchange between strangers and that energy is contagious, and it felt the same way on set because we were just strangers trying to make something happen. And some of us weren't, but I didn't know a lot of the people going into this project. Really, I met everybody pretty much except for Chrissy. Chrissy's the only one I knew going in, but I feel like I'm a lot closer to a lot of these people now, so...
You become a family, like you really do. You start, like, maybe a couple people, and again, we got really lucky with some of the, just wanting to shout out like some of the folks who couldn't join us today. Our other producer Laura Scarano brought in our cinematographer Akina Vandeveld, who was fantastic. Shelley brought in our sound person Salo, who was great. I think Laura brought in Chardon, who was our first AD. Ale, who was our amazing production designer. So, you just form this little task force of like, okay, we've got our mission. Our mission is to make a good film. And I think when you have people who are really, dedicated to their craft, but also, again, don't have the ego about it, where it's not like, I'm here to just show off how great of a production designer I could be, but I want to be the best production designer that I could be for this film. And I think we got really lucky. And you're with people for basically 3 days straight, and you're doing all this work, and you have to be able to rely on that team. And you just build up it's like in a women's restroom, you just build up this shorthand of intimacy in a short time. And it's to me, it's one of the reasons why I like film as a medium, right? It's not solitary. It is coming together and forming a little family, even if it only exists for 72 hours.
One of the many takeaways from this is the diversity within that bathroom. You've got the older woman who shares life lessons. You've got the young woman who is being, I guess I get to be the one to say this, who is being dick bombed by her boyfriend. A term that I was not familiar with until I read your script. But there are different body types, different ages. There's an aspect of race to this as well, that there's something here for everyone to look at and go, yeah, I feel that way because blah, blah, blah.
I mean, for me as one of the creators here, and I think we talk so much about representation that it could get kind of lost as to what representation really means and the power of it. And I always go back to the fact that I didn't come into my queer identity until later in life, mainly because I didn't have a lot of characters in mainstream media that presented queer the way that I present queer and connect to my queerness. There were a lot of and there still are a lot of very, stereotypical queer characters, and we're put in these boxes. And so when telling a queer story and a female story, I think it is really important to have people reflected, not just on camera, but then behind camera, that all of our audiences would be able to look at and see themselves in. And because if that's not there, I don't know if we're doing our job as storytellers. Does the story actually translate if there isn't someone on screen that audiences can grasp and see themselves in?
Well, in that space, in that bathroom, you're all looking in a mirror.
Mm.
You're all looking at yourself, for yourself. And that also the theme of self-love, and the difficulty in coming to self-love is at the root of this film.
Well, and I think too, a thing that was to yes and all of that,
Good
it was,
improv skills. Well done.
there's we're told that there is a right way and a wrong way to be a woman. And I think that's a bunch of BS. There is no right way or wrong way to be a woman. And I think for me in the writing of it, and that was an important thing to show, not just, Fiona, but everybody, we all, you can be a mom, you could be you could be queer, you could be a young woman just trying to figure it out, you could be an older woman who maybe has more of it figured out. Like, as much as we could make it believable within the 12 minutes of the film and the constraints of that, like, how many different sort of perspectives on womanhood can we fit in here? And, in terms of that type of representation, along with the physical representation and the racial representation and everything, it's just showing that forget what the messaging that you're getting from the magazines and the internet and everything, and just like embrace your self-love. Like you are perfect just the way you are. And that's I wrote those lines of what Stevie, the sort of, and she is named Stevie because she is named after Stevie Nicks, the queen witch of all of us. Just saying of like, when you love yourself, like that's the first step, and that was, I think, an important message to include in this.
Hey folks, I'm interrupting again. We are fast approaching the end of Season 3, and I'm really proud of the conversations that Transqat has been able to bring you. We've supported the LGBTQ+ community with episodes spotlighting PFLAG, the Out Accountability Project, Dignity USA, SojiCon, Prism Counseling, Q+, and the beloved Free Mom Hugs. You've heard in-depth explorations of new creative works from Abby Maxwell, Joy Layden, Logan Ward, Angela Wick, and of course, my contractually obligated annual conversation with author Elliot Schrafer. Plus, we've offered the personal stories of folks like wrestler Mac Beggs, Congressman Barney Frank, I still can't believe that happened, and the folks on our Valentine's Day special. If you're a regular listener, take a moment and share your favorite episode on social media. At transqat.com, I've uploaded a template for a social media post. Fill in the blanks with your personal selection and add it to Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, or TikTok. Zhuzh it up, and then be sure to tag us at Transqat. That's TRANSQAT. Thanks.
Last couple of questions, though. Ashley, as this was your first time directing, yes?
Yes, it was.
What was your biggest takeaway?
Ooh, that you are only as great as the people that you surround yourself with, and that it takes a lot to be the leader of a ship, but it is more important to make sure that every teammate is there in support of the greater good, which is, going back to what we spoke about. And you're only as good as your teammates, and that I could have never gotten through this without the phenomenal humans that I surrounded myself with.
Epiphany, it starts with you looking at your phone and your date is late. Assuming that date happens, do you think Fiona's going to be a different person for her experiences in the bathroom?
No, I don't think it will probably go differently. But what I do think that Fiona took away from that bathroom, and like, again, we're speaking to parallels because it's something I took away from the production itself, that it's okay to be vulnerable. Earlier when you told me, is it hard being pretty? You know what I mean? As a trans woman, we deal with, especially, again, with being passable, and people think, oh, well, you passed. The world must be roses for you. It's hella difficult. And I think being guarded and always having your guard up, this spoke to her being able to be vulnerable and to let people in. So, and that's what I took away from working with these beautiful human beings, is that it's okay for me not to always be just structure. I'm here for an assignment. I'm here to do a job, but to allow myself to let my guard down and actually be a part of the environment that I'm in versus just observing.
To give up control. I'm sure everybody struggles with that to some extent, but certainly my experience, you had to be in control for so long until you could reach for your truth and until you could, live authentically.
And even then you have to remain in control.
Yeah. And the notion of giving that up just seems contrary to everything that's common sense, but it's necessary.
Exactly. And I think that's what the movie showed, that it's okay to let people in. It's okay to let those walls down when permitted.
Chrissy, we don't have time for me to arrange for the rest of the guests to jump on you about the fact that your character is the only mean person in this film.
They could feel free to jump on me for that. It was,
I was thinking you're this wonderful person. I love talking with you. And
total
it was
typecasting.
tough. It was
what an awful person you are.
It was very hard because not only am I not really an actor, I haven't acted on camera in a very long time, but to me, I can't even, it's a struggle for me to even get in that mindset, right? Of like, what would make me, just based on a split second, of a person, be that discriminatory, be that it's, and we added that character based on your, based on your notes. And I think it was very important, right? Like, we're showing a very rose-colored glasses kind of like, this is what the world should be kind of thing, but it's not. But the unfortunate reality is that it is not what the world is like. And I think we needed that dose of reality right up front to put you in Fiona's mindset, to explain why she is so guarded. And, it's just a split second. And
that was the realest part of the movie.
Yeah. And it was hard for me. And especially too, to your point, Epiphany, of like, we didn't really, know each other. This is our first time just interacting as ourselves. And I'm like, I don't want her to think that I don't love her. And, but it's, and I'll just say that, when I was writing that character, I chose the name Marjorie specifically, but yeah, everybody can yell at me. This is my only villain. This is the only time I'll play a villain.
But it was needed. It was needed. And I say that across the board because, it's expected in certain situations, especially with how they tend to represent trans people in film. They always go for it. They don't really get a authentic trans person. They will do a drag queen. So, you know what I mean? So they're always trying to put us in the light of, this is a man. You know what I'm saying? So even when you're pretty or have yourself put together, there are still people who are looking like, she's pretty, but she's tall as hell. You know what I'm saying? Like, you deal, and these are things I deal with. So like I said, that split second was the most impactful and realest part of that movie, because as trans people, that speaks to our everyday experience. There's always eyes on us, which tends to why we are so guarded, or why we always feel like we have to be on the defense. So I appreciate that was in there.
Yeah. I really liked how subtle it was too. Like, it's not somebody like commenting or saying anything. It was just like a real moment of judgment of just
it never is. It's always subtle. It's always just.
Yep, a look.
Thank you so much for saying that out loud. That makes me very happy.
That was you. And
thank you for pointing out that
we knew we came to the table with shortcomings, right? We understood that as cis, women, that there were going to be things that we missed. And so to have a consultant on the film that was able to speak to the truth, and not that the truth of trans experience is a monolith, right? It's definitely not, just like how womanhood is not a monolith, but to have that point of view gifted to us made an immense impact on our storytelling. So thank you.
It's funny how that literally 2 seconds of Chrissy on camera balances the whole photo shoot afterwards, and the joy and the glitter and the the voguing and the fun, that 2 seconds grounds it.
Yeah.
And it tells you everything you need to know with no dialogue.
Exactly.
All right. 2 things. 1, talk about where and how people can find this film.
We're just at the top of our festival run. So as of right now, June 26th in Hartford, Connecticut at OutCT, you'll be able to see Sorority before a phenomenal feature film during the 38th annual.
I believe so. Yeah.
Festival in Connecticut. So it's an honor to be back. And we are just starting to get our notifications as to what other festivals we get to showcase at. And so you could follow us on Instagram at Sorority Short Film. And that's where we'll announce all of our festival appearances. And we're hoping for a really fabulous festival run.
Last one, and I'd like everybody to put in your 2 cents on this. Why is right now the right time for this film? I mean, I have to pee all the time. So in theory, maybe that's just my age, but in theory, you could tell this story anytime. Why is right now the moment?
That's a loaded question. Now, I mean, it really is. I think at conception, it was an important story to tell. And then throughout the development of the film, as we developed the film, went into pre-production, went through an election cycle here in the States, and then literally came into the first term of this fascist regime, we were in editing, right? So we were living with this story through one of the most difficult turning points in American history. And so it became a very important story to tell to a very urgent story to tell in a matter of months. I am a big believer, I believe we all are here, that storytelling is our power in terms of our activism. It is how you create change. When you could connect to someone through their heart, you could change their mind.
Yeah, again, yes, anding everything. It's crazy how, like Ashley said, it went from important and urgent to somehow even more important and urgent. So much of what this fascist regime is doing and how they are using trans individuals in the trans community as a wedge issue is based and rooted in fear and ignorance. And I think this story is just, no, we're all humans. We're all humans. We all want to be loved. We all want to be accepted. We all want to feel connection. Why are we driving wedges in between us when we should be coming together? We should be supporting each other. Again, this is the world we could have. Let's fight for that, and I think that's just with our little 13 minutes that we have you for, if we can just reach somebody who is maybe like, oh, I didn't think of it that way, then I think that's important. And that's why this story needs to be told in this moment.
I think we are in a moment in time where a big segment of the population, not only in the States, but in the world, has been making decisions based on concepts and not people. The story itself, yes, it's speaking, about a very specific trans experience of this character, right? In a woman's bathroom. And we know that has so layered, and our trans brothers and sisters have been villainized to a disgusting level, and where it's used as a punchline, as a topic to move a lot of other things. But the core of all of this is that a lot of the conversations revolved around concepts and not humans. And the more that anything we can do to remind people, as Chrissy said, that we're all humans in the world and that we have way more similarities than differences among us, I think the better it can be. And sure, maybe it's one person in the entire, festival run that watches this and has that shift, because everyone else maybe watches it and is already in that camp. But for that one person that can understand at a different level that humanity is what's important in the world, all the effort and the energy that went into the project will be 100% worth it.
It's the idea of creating empathy and connection through representation. It's like the empathy of creating hello, there are people in the world who express themselves in a way that you don't understand because you don't have that empathy and connection. And this is such a beautiful window into a different world. But I'm just really, really grateful that 2025 is the year that this story is going to spread like wildfire in a good way.
Yes, good wildfire.
Yeah, it's like wildfire. We're all in LA.
Oh gosh.
How about
Yes.
spread like glitter? Spread like glitter, and then it doesn't go away. There you go.
Nice save, Danielle.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I got this script. I think it must have been like days or a week after, Sarah McBride, or the first openly transgender congressperson, was, put into office. And then it was also like not long after, of course, where Nancy Mace had done a horrible proposal to like do a ban of transgender women for the women's bathroom. And obviously the script was written before any of that happened. So this story would have always been important to tell, like no matter the time. And it felt very urgent in that moment because of what was happening politically, of course. But yeah, I think like ultimately it kind of goes back to what a lot of people have touched on already. We're all just human beings. It's part of the human experience to be whoever you want to be and be who you really are, be authentically you. And I think being an empathetic person is so important to be able to like even connect with stories. Like stories are all about having empathy for the characters and being able to connect in that way. And so for right now, it's like, this is such a time to empathize with the experience of being in a marginalized community. And obviously this is a story that, in the script itself and in the story of what happens with Fiona in the bathroom, it's all just like this kind of like very small story of just that joy that comes from living and being just a person. And I feel like that's so important to tell because it is subtle. It's not like relying heavily on on tropes or trauma. It's all just we're people and we're experiencing life together. And I think people just need to see those stories.
For me, I feel like the trans community is being used as a scapegoat at this point. It's nothing new. We're less than 1% of the population. There's no reason why we should be discussed every day, especially because this just didn't pop up. I'm 47 years old. I know when I was coming up, there were trans women who had fully transitioned. Before that, we're talking about all the way to biblical days. We've always been here. The reason why you haven't heard of us is because prior to this, we were living our lives and unbothered. Maybe the fact that we identify so far on the spectrum, people just chose to leave us alone. And you only heard about like the gay rights and this and this and that. And you really didn't hear about trans people. But we've been here. And now I feel like this administration is using us as a distraction for all the bullshit that they're doing behind the scenes. And things like this project shows, in my mind, we have a right to just exist. We're here. We're present. You've probably dealt with plenty of trans people and not even known it. Like, this isn't something new. We're not these villains that just popped up within the last 10 years. This isn't anything new, but at its core, we're human beings. Whether you feel like I have a mental disorder, whether you feel like my crime, all of the ins and outs and the bullshit surrounding it, it's still a person. We have a right to exist and we're here. And for a lot of trans people, I feel like we've been doing fine before everybody start making these things into an issue. This is our fight, not because we've chosen to take this fight on, but because you've made it a fight to where we were just fine coexisting with the rest of the world. And I think this is a reminder that we're just people like anybody else who go through the same bullshit at its surface and at its core. past all of these issues that everyone is cherry picking to have a platform. We don't want to be your victims. We don't want to be your martyrs. We just want to live like everyone else has the right to live.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you, everyone, for sharing the space.
Yes.
This is Sadie McCarthy. I'm Claire's niece.
And you've just been listening to Transqat. It is made by one of my favorite people in the world, Clare McCarthy.
Transqat is a production of Transqat Enterprises, LLC.
Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.
Join us on the web at transqat.com.
That's TRANSQAT.com.
QAT.com.
QAT.com.
There you'll find links to Transqat, the blog,
writing projects,
speaking engagements,
and our PayPal donations page.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monkeys.
Monies.
Your monies.
Your monies.
Not monkeys.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monies. Any monkeys will be gratefully received as well.
Follow Transqat on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
On TikTok, we are at The Real Transqat.
Want to tell your story on air?
Or ask Claire a question?
What is the deal?
She has all the answers.
Or suggest a guest or topic for an upcoming episode.
Use the contact page at the website
or email her directly at crmtranscat@gmail.com.
crmtranscat@gmail.com.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.